What if the only thing standing between you and the life you desperately want is not money, not opportunity, not luck, but the story you keep telling yourself every single morning when you wake up? What if rich people are not rich because they were handed something you were not, but because somewhere along the way they made one radical, earth-shaking decision that most people are too afraid to make? They decided to look inward before they looked outward. They decided to develop themselves before they demanded results from the world. What if I told you that the most dangerous prison in the world has no bars, no walls, no guards? It lives inside your own mind, and you have been handing it the key every single day without even realizing it? What if self-development is not just a motivational buzzword? What if it is literally the superpower that separates people who build empires from people who only watch empires being built? Stay with me, because what I am about to share with you will not just change how you think about wealth, it will completely dismantle the version of yourself that was never meant to stay. What if everything you have been taught about success is fundamentally, dangerously, beautifully wrong? What if the reason you are not where you want to be has nothing to do with your education, your background, your bank account, or the neighborhood you grew up in, and everything to do with the invisible narrative playing on repeat inside the deepest chambers of your mind? I want you to sit with that for a moment, because I have spent years studying human behavior, studying what makes people collapse under pressure and what makes other people rise through it. I can tell you with every ounce of certainty I possess that the gap between the life you are living and the life you are capable of living is not as wide as you think, but it is also not going to close on its own. Here is what I know about vulnerability, and I know this is not the word you expected to hear in a speech about thinking like wealthy people, but stay with me, because this is where everything changes. Vulnerability is not the opposite of strength. Vulnerability is not weakness dressed up in soft language. Vulnerability is the willingness to show up when you cannot control the outcome. And here is the shocking truth that most people never discover. Every single person who has ever built something extraordinary, every person who has ever created wealth from nothing, every person who has ever looked at a broken situation and decided to rebuild it, they all had one thing in common. They were willing to be vulnerable enough to try when failure was absolutely on the table. Rich people, and I'm not just talking about financial wealth, I'm talking about people who are rich in purpose, rich in joy, rich in meaningful connection, rich in the kind of freedom that money alone can never buy. These people understand something that the rest of the world spends an entire lifetime running away from. They understand that you cannot get to courage without walking straight through vulnerability. You simply cannot. There is no shortcut. There is no back door. The only way out is through. And the first place that journey begins is inside your own story. What if I told you that the most revolutionary act of self-development you could ever perform is to own your story completely, every embarrassing chapter, every painful paragraph, every sentence you wish you could delete? Because here's what happens when you refuse to own your story. When you bury it, when you numb it, when you pretend those chapters never existed, those buried stories do not disappear, they do not dissolve. They go underground and they begin to secretly write your future for you. And you wonder why you keep making the same choices. You wonder why you keep attracting the same situations. You wonder why success feels like it is always just one step ahead of your reach, and the answer is terrifying in its simplicity. The story you have not faced is the story that is running your life. Rich thinkers, people who operate at a level most people only dream about, they do not run from their stories. They sit down with them, they examine them. They say, this happened to me, and it was real, and it was painful, but it does not get to define my next chapter. That is not just emotional intelligence. That is the most sophisticated financial strategy I have ever encountered. Because when you free yourself from the weight of an unexamined story, you unlock cognitive capacity, creative energy, and bold, decisive action that you never even knew was sitting dormant inside you. And here's where shame enters the conversation, because shame is the true enemy of wealth in every form. Shame is that crushing, suffocating whisper that says, you are not smart enough. You are not educated enough. You did not come from the right family. People like you do not get to live like that. Shame is not guilt. Guilt says, I did something bad. Shame says, I am something bad. And the research on this is absolutely clear. Shame corrodes the very part of us that believes we can change. It shuts down the neural pathways of possibility. It literally makes your brain smaller in its capacity to imagine a different future. But here's what is absolutely shocking about shame. It cannot survive being spoken. It cannot survive empathy. It cannot survive the moment you look it directly in the face and refuse to let it have the final word. The moment you bring shame into the light, its power over you begins to collapse. And that collapse, that beautiful, terrifying, liberating collapse, is the beginning of every success story ever written. Rich people are not people who never felt shame. They are people who learn not to let shame make their decisions. Now I want to talk about something that rich thinkers do that most people find deeply uncomfortable. They embrace imperfection as a strategy, not as a consolation prize, not as something they tolerate. They actively, deliberately, unapologetically embrace it as the engine of their growth. They understand that perfectionism is not about high standards. Perfectionism is about fear. It is about the desperate, exhausting need to protect yourself from the judgment of others, and it is costing you everything. Every time you wait until conditions are perfect to start your business, you are not being strategic, you are being afraid. Every time you hold back your idea in the meeting because what if it sounds stupid, you are not being humble. You are letting fear make a financial decision on your behalf. Every time you refuse to invest in yourself, in a course, in a coach, in a book, in an experience, because you are waiting until you feel ready. I want you to hear this clearly. Ready is a myth that your fear invented to keep you exactly where you are. Wholehearted people, people who are fully alive, fully engaged, fully committed to showing up for their own lives, they do not wait for readiness. They cultivate courage instead. And courage, real courage, is not the absence of fear. Courage is saying, I am terrified and I am doing this anyway because my dream is worth more than my comfort. What if self-development is the one investment that has a guaranteed return because every other investment can fail? Markets crash, businesses close, relationships end. But the person you become through deliberate, courageous, wholehearted self-development that cannot be taken away from you, no recession touches it, no failure destroys it, no person can repossess it. You carry it with you into every room you enter, and it changes what is possible in that room simply because you walk through the door. Here is another truth that wealthy thinkers understand at a level that transforms everything. Connection is not a luxury. Connection is the infrastructure of success. Every major breakthrough in human history happened in relationship. Every business that scaled happened because of trust. Every opportunity that changed someone's life arrived through a human being who believed in them. And yet we live in a culture that glorifies the lone wolf, that celebrates the self-made myth, as if anyone ever built anything of significance entirely alone. The research devastates that myth. Completely, human beings are wired for connection. It is not a soft skill, it is a survival skill, and it is a success skill. People who invest in genuine, authentic, vulnerable human connection do not just live longer and happier, they build more, create more, and sustain more than people who try to white-knuckle their way to success in isolation. So when I talk about self-development, I am not just talking about reading books and listening to podcasts, though those things matter. I am talking about developing your capacity for genuine human connection. I am talking about developing your ability to sit in discomfort without numbing it away. I am talking about developing the audacity to believe, really believe in your bones that you are enough, right now, as you are, with everything you carry. Because here is the thing about enough. It is not a destination. It is not something you earn after you hit a certain income level or achieve a certain title. Enough is a decision. It is the most powerful financial decision you will ever make, because the moment you decide you are enough, you stop making choices from scarcity. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into spaces that were never built for you. You stop accepting less than you deserve because you secretly believe that is all you are worth. And when scarcity thinking leaves, when it finally fully leaves, something extraordinary floods in to fill the space. Abundance thinking, creative thinking, generous thinking. The kind of thinking that looks at a problem and sees 10 possibilities instead of 10 obstacles. That is rich thinking. That is the mindset shift that changes not just your bank account, but your entire experience of being alive. What if the most radical thing you could do, the thing that would shock the people around you, the thing that would completely rewrite your trajectory, is simply to decide, starting today, that your inner world deserves the same level of investment as your outer world? What if you treated your mind, your beliefs, your emotional intelligence, your capacity for courage and connection, what if you treated all of that with the same seriousness and discipline that wealthy people treat their financial portfolios? Because that is exactly what they do. The people you admire, the people whose lives look like what you are reaching for, they did not stumble into self-awareness. They chose it. They chose it on the days they did not want to. They chose it when it was uncomfortable and inconvenient, and when it required them to look at parts of themselves they would have preferred to ignore. They chose it because they understood something profound, that the outer life is always a reflection of the inner one, always. You cannot build a life bigger than the belief system that lives inside you. You cannot sustain success that outpaces your sense of self-worth. And you cannot create genuine lasting wealth in any form while simultaneously running from who you are. Self-development is not a trend. It is not a luxury. It is not something you do after you become successful. It is the thing that makes success possible in the first place. It is the superpower that ordinary people discover and extraordinary people never stop practicing. So I want to leave you with one question, and I want you to really let it land, not just intellectually, but in your chest where the real decisions are made. What story are you telling yourself about what is possible for you? And is that story serving the life you are brave enough to want? Because the life you want is not out there waiting for the right moment or the right circumstances or the right amount of money in your account. It is waiting for you to become the person who believes they deserve it. It is waiting for you to do the brave, uncomfortable, revolutionary work of self-development. It is waiting for you to show up imperfect, vulnerable, courageous, and completely unapologetically enough. The world needs you to stop playing small. The world needs you to think bigger, live braver, and invest in the one asset that changes everything, yourself. The entire message of this speech rests on one unshakable truth, that wealth begins within. Before the strategy, before the opportunity, before the right connection finds you, there must be a version of you who is courageous enough to receive it. Self-development is not a chapter in your success story. It is the entire foundation upon which every chapter is written. When you own your story, silence your shame, embrace your imperfection, invest in genuine connection, and truly decide, that you are enough, you do not just begin to think like rich people, you begin to think like a free person. And freedom, real freedom, is the greatest wealth any human being can ever possess. The journey inward is the journey forward. It always has been, it always will be.